Hello and welcome to a really exciting, do we call it a special edition of the Edufuturists podcast? We are blessed and honoured to have Duncan and Neelam with us. And I might as well say it's always blessing to have Ben with us as well. I couldn't do it on my own. Of course we couldn't. Of course we couldn't. The partner in crime of the Edufuturists podcast. And today we are going to be exploring everything BETT.
Everything BETT.
Everything better. I don't know whether that's a strap line, but we'll pick that. I've just seen Duncan make a note, so it's always an interesting bit to be a non-marketing person that's just really give you that. But yeah, should we get going? Ben, before we start, how's things? Let's not take 5 minutes like we normally do.
We won't take 5 minutes. Real quick one. Yeah, good. I'm back in the cold. I've been in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, so coming back and walking back into to Manchester Airport, freezing cold, was not a pleasant experience. But we are on a countdown to that special time of year, and actually, more importantly, we're on the countdown to BETT, aren't we? On the countdown to the 40th year of BETT. We're looking looking forward to it.
Thanks for everybody. The special time of the year is the BTEC mock exams that Ben's referring to. As you always know, endpoint assessments are the key area of every education business, or the thing that we often talk about in a negative way. But yeah, the education break, we'll deep dive into BETT, but ultimately and when it's coming up. But actually, that break, and I think everybody talks about this in education, the only break that everybody gets where there isn't a million emails when you come back from holiday. Ben, I don't know what yours is like. Is that festive period or the 2 weeks of however you celebrate or have that downtime if you do so. But yeah, let's bring the guests in. Neelam, Duncan, Neelam, how's things? Been a while.
Very good, thank you, and thanks for having us here today, Steve.
Good stuff. Do you want to tell us a bit about your journey? For those people, I think everybody's going to know you, but for those that 0.01% that doesn't, do you want to do a bit of an introduction and go from there, Neelam?
Sure, thank you. So, as you know, Steve, I've been attending BETT for evermore. I should say over 18 years. I'm just showing you my age. It's been there for so long. I think the very first time I ever walked into BETT, it was overwhelming. Obviously, I was there in the capacity as an ICT teacher supporting a school in Southwest London, and never had I been to such an event. It was massive. It was big. There was so much available. And you think you know your trade, you think you know what you're doing, and then you enter BETT and you think, oh my, there's so much more there that I just didn't know about, or there's such intelligent people who know what they're doing and are able to make these connections. And so I often still come to BETT in awe now, 20 years later, with the understanding that I'm going to learn something. And in the next 3 days, if I don't learn one, I'll definitely learn one thing, if not so much more. I'll be exposed to new innovations. I'll be meeting new people, creating new contacts, and just be able to, I'm sure that this is going to be the best place to have a professional development for teachers, for senior leaders, for digital leaders. I'm obviously coming in with a different hat on now. Before I'd come in as a teacher, then I was looking at groups of schools. Now we're a multi-academy trust. Then we're looking at always trying to be at the forefront of new innovation in the capacity of what I do in Southeast Asia and here in the UK. So BETT to me, I would never give it up. I'm always there. I find a way to make it work in the calendar. Everything takes a side step after that. I'm also one of the BETT judges. So to be there and congratulate the winners on their special night and know that they've made such an effort to get to that space in itself is exhilarating. So if I haven't said enough about BETT, yes, it's a great place to be. And if you're in IT or you're in cybersecurity or you're in teaching and learning development, digital education, this is the place to be every year if you can make it there.
2 points just to raise straight away before we bring Duncan in is, I don't think anybody knows what they're doing. So those people that you think know what they're doing, and those experts probably just looking at everybody else and just going, yeah, I'm taking it till I make it anyway. And does anybody really make it? I just think that's one of those things. And the other bit is, probably should have said right off the bat, me and Ben are really proud to be media partners with BETT this year. And you just mentioned the awards. For anybody that is listening that has been nominated or will be at the awards, you'll see me and Ben. We've undecided who's going to wear the Dumb and Dumber tuxedo, which colour we're going to go with, and who's going to shoot the bird. But we will be popping around, we'll be interviewing and having some podcast conversations on that evening. And that will be, it's my 13th year at BETT. And my first BETT Awards, never been nominated. Always a bridesmaid, Duncan. But should we bring you in at that point? How are you doing? You all right?
Very well, thank you, and absolutely feel it a privilege to be involved in such a fantastic podcast. And I'm excited for BETT too. This is my first year and my first BETT UK in charge. So I'm the newish portfolio director for BETT. So I look after all of the BETTs. So BETT Asia, BETT Brazil, BETT UK. We call it BETT UK. It's a global BETT. 44% of the people that come from outside of the UK. It's getting more and more international, but increasing numbers of a UK audience too. I've been as an exhibitor with the TES Global probably about 15 years ago, when it was back at Olympia, and I've been as a sort of delegate wandering around when I was running my own startup. So a long time in education, and this for me at a really crucial time when sort of tech companies have developed their superpower with AI and schools are facing the daunting challenge of that. I think it's a really unique opportunity for BETT to bring that community together and help them, because I know it can be daunting as well. It gets bigger, it gets more daunting, the tech gets more difficult to understand, and also to find the time to understand and how to use it. And we absolutely want to help and bring those worlds together. The buyer and the solution provider. So yeah, I'm super excited, and we've got some new things to unveil at BETT for 2025. So yeah, we've been working hard this year, but lots more to do in the weeks that remain.
Amazing. It sounds exciting, and I suppose congratulations on that conversation of being an exhibitor into that space, and then first time being this global portfolio manager for BETT. And I imagine, just before we go into digging around BETT UK, I imagine there's lots of exciting, interesting things about BETT being a global event, not just BETT UK being a global event, but BETT being global. The fact that you can support educators wherever people are in the world in that space, to be able to have access to high quality educational technology and educational services. It's been going, it's 40 years this year, isn't it? So to be able to then be doing that for so long, for so many educators, for so many policymakers and tech companies in that space is quite a testament. So just before we get into the conversation about today, what do you see around the world, I suppose, from a BETT perspective, or even though you're new into it, what does that look like?
Yeah, you're right. It is our 40th birthday. That there will be a little bit of looking back and nostalgia from 1985 and the first BETT, where technology was very different. We've got some of the original photos and adverts from that show. But yeah, looking around the world and having sort of completed a BETT Asia at the beginning of October and attended a BETT Brazil back in April. School systems can differ in terms of how they're governed and how they're structured and how they're set up. But one thing that probably helped convince the business of Hive that owns BETT to bring everything together under one portfolio director was probably something we learned from Table Talks last year, where we were putting 10 teachers and buyers on a table talking about a particular topic. And what was happening was they were raising their concerns and challenges, and they were all the same, whether they were a head teacher of a school in the Middle East, a primary school practitioner in rural school in Cumbria. There was real commonality with some of the challenges that they're facing. And they took great, it became almost cathartic, these table talks, a session of sort of therapy and peer-to-peer learning that they were understanding about, what are the challenges and opportunities around AI? How do they deal with accessibility and inclusion? The challenges around devices in the classroom, not in the classroom. How do they use them? Do they embrace them? And I think there are always learnings to be taken from other school systems and practitioners around the world. So yeah, that sort of gave us great sort of comfort that these issues are global, and it's our role to bring that community together. And I've been telling the BETT team this year this isn't our event. We're the current custodians of it. This event is really, it belongs to the community. And they've been supporting us for 40 years, and hopefully will support us for another 40 years. We're really just looking after this event, nurturing them. We've got to listen to them. So there'll be much more involvement from the community, so we can draw out those problems. And as I said at the beginning of BETT Asia, we have senior level policymakers in the room. We have the biggest tech providers in the world in the room. We have trust leaders, head teachers, and teaching practitioners. Everyone that's affected is in that room. So all the answers will lie in that room. It's a big room, XL, but it's just about making sure we help make those matches and get the right people talking to each other. So everything can align and be sorted, hopefully, in terms of policy, through leadership, right down to the practitioner level.
What a great point that is. So we need to take that out, Ben. Just take that note. People that can make the difference collectively will be in that room. And I think whatever the size of the room, if you're in a cupboard on your own listening to this and you have to take the mop out, it might be a little bit different if it's just you. But generally, when there's big space and ultimately when there are a collective gathering of enthusiastic, positive people that want change and want to influence change, you're always going to get that. And I think I've been to events, I've attended events, I've supported events, and I think that cross-sector silo and those silos that exist within education in England, in the UK, and actually globally need to be broken down. And I think this is the type of event, because we've got so many different people across it, systemically, on the coalface and all that kind of stuff that can make that change. I think that's where we need to focus. We need to give the voices that BETT does, whether they're across many theatres, across, not even if they're on a theatre and you've got some exhibitors that are then actually giving some space to an educator or an ICT lead or a digital strategist on their space, or even some students. Ultimately, go around and listen to all of it. Because if you think, oh, that's a primary school talk, like we've just said, the language and the acronym might be different, but actually the problems and the solutions really are the same. We need to think about what the problems are. We need to think about collectively how we can solve them. But don't be then going, well, that's a primary school or a local authority primary school, and I'm a 90 school mat, or I'm a university. We're all facing the same challenges collectively. It's actually how can we help some of those? And I think that's what I've seen in terms of the advancement of these bits, where actually on stages where there's a cross-section of people from different sectors and even within education. So I'm talking primary, secondary, multi-academy trust, FE and HE. Also independent training providers, apprenticeship delivery, but also those people from business and enterprise sectors coming in and advising. And I think education is probably more open to that in terms of collaboration than ever before, because the challenges aren't going away when they're trying to solve them themselves, I think. And we're starting to realise that.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of flip part of that over to Neelam, because I think she's a great example. Huge depth of experience. She's been thankfully a great champion and supporter and helper of BETT over a number of years. We're working hard this year as well to make sure a lot of the discussions that we have and the panel debates that happen. This is one thing that maybe frustrates me when I go and see other events, and I'm not going to name names, of course, but there's often a lot of policy leaders, a lot of people talking about what should happen in the classroom. I don't have a teacher on the panel. So I'm going to talk about what we're going to do to you, or what we think should happen, but they're maybe too removed from the classroom. So we're sort of making a concerted effort to make sure that we have teachers' voice sort of coming out along, because it is great to have everyone in the room, but time is the sort of great challenge that everybody has. Neelam's had more experience than myself working at the coalface, but it's sort of making sure that practitioner and teacher voice, somebody from within a school, comes out in all of these theoretical policy conversations about the medium, long-term future. That seems so important now, more than ever.
I would tend to agree with you on that, Duncan. I think as much as we want to put policy out and we want to put out the bigger guidelines, the statements. It's such a different playing field for practitioners, teachers on the ground, and what's actually feasible within their current environment and their current infrastructure. And again, this differs so widely across those that are, in an individual school versus in a multi-academy trust versus in an international sector. Having seen that widespread of cultural context within each area, it differs so widely. And I think that's where BETT's biggest strength is, that, we're going to show you what could potentially be, and then how you can apply it in context within your environment. What does good look like? And, this is how most of us tend to use a particular sort of application tool, whatever you want to call it. But let's just show you exactly what good looks like, and then how you could take that particular sort of example and really make it so that it has a bigger impact in your environment. And what I was just going to say, one more thing, Ben, was what I really enjoy when I get down there is being able to see how it's used in a different way across different sort of organizations. So a teacher might use a particular application in a particular specific way that would suit them. They'll take a tool and they'll say, this is really good for feedback and assessment. This is how I use it, for instance. But then you take that in a wider context across a multi-academy trust or a group, and you can see the economies of scale. And then you take that and you put it into a really innovative like environment. So when I was there at BETT Asia, you would see like a very simple, but the impact it was making across the board and across the year groups and the trust level, and then, how it got into policy, that's quite stunning too. So I think your eyes just open, and then having the conversations with people and people who are specialists in their trade, for instance, or who have had so much experience in this area, they'll be able to tell you something that you've never thought about. And then that's interesting. Let me go back and see when I can apply it in context. Similar with research, you get great guidelines, great principles, but can I actually pick that up and put it in practice in my environment? And that's the conversations again you can have, and then see what could this look like. So very much everything, like you said, it's really important to bring the voices into the conversation from all stakeholders, so it builds this sort of holistic picture rather than a one-sided view. This is great practice, guys. Let's bring this environment, but actually, it's not feasible.
And I think that segues really brilliantly into the EdTech Buyers Guide that we wanted to make sure we discussed on the podcast today. And unfortunately, Michael couldn't be with us. He's not very well. Hope you get well soon. By the time this goes out, Michael, hope you're feeling a lot better. But this has been written as a support document for those people who will be attending BETT to think about, okay, what does this look like? And you're going to be, it's an investment, right? So we're spending money on tools or on software or on physical kit. We know that will happen, and that schools, multi-academy trusts, organisations are going to be investing in that. And what I really liked about this that's just been launched as the Buyer's Guide for BETT is the ability to ask some questions, some really good questions, before you part with your hard-earned or your parents' hard-earned or the government's hard-earned money into what's the biggest impact to this. And I love the fact that we're starting with impact. Like, what impact could this have, and what impact will this have? And we're thinking about some of the key ideas and the key, I suppose, like what you're looking to achieve. And it really ties into what you were just saying there, both of you, Duncan and Neelam, that idea that there will be lots of things there, but it doesn't always mean that we should be thinking everything. We need one of each. I feel a little bit like this when I think about pick and mix. When I was a kid in Woolworths, and some of you remember this, and some of the people who listen to this don't remember Woolworths, unless you live in Australia, and it's still there. But in Woolworths, I used to go in on a Saturday with my mum and my grandma sometimes, and there'd be a big pick and mix stall, and you get a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and my mum would always say, you've only got however many, I think it were a quarter or a half. Sometimes if we were lucky, I might get half a pound. I don't know, 400 grams or something silly. I don't know, something silly. And you want a little bit of everything, and she'd be looking. She'd go, "You've gone way over there. You've took too much." And I think sometimes it can be like that at a place like BETT or somewhere similar, where you think, "There's a robot. There's some new toys. There's a new piece of software." And although that's brilliant, it's about thinking about that in context. What you're saying there, Neelam, for your context, and thinking about your digital strategy and what you're looking to achieve achieve with your students and the people in your care. So one of the things that kind of comes up there is about how do we make sure that when we go to BETT and when we think about having these conversations around these tools and these services, how do we make sure that we're looking at aligns with what we are looking to achieve? Because that's ultimately the $1 million question, isn't it? How do I make sure that I buy the right things for my context? I don't know if anybody wants to speak at that first. Neelam, you've got a big smile on your face, which makes me think that you've got a plan for that.
Well, I was just thinking, I do have a plan for it, actually. I was thinking more along the lines of, you really ought to have a strategy in place, a digital transformation, a digital strategy. Why are we going to BETT? What are you looking for? And I'm smiling here because at the same time, I know that there's so many schools who don't necessarily have one. So while we're having this conversation, I was thinking, really, we should be preparing them to have, these are the things you need to think about when you come into BETT. Here are the key components of having a digital strategy. And then once you've highlighted that, what technology will help you solve these educational challenges or concerns that you're trying to get around. So from my context, when I come into BETT, I'm thinking about what is it we're trying to do? What's our vision for the next 2-3 years? How can we build that learning community that we want to build? What tools are out there to support this? Who are the right people, right? Quote unquote. Who are the people I need to speak to? And how can we carry on these conversations even post BETT so that I can try these pilots, perhaps get my case studies, find like-minded people who've perhaps already done this with with other schools. But a part of what I'm always doing is just making sure that actually our digital strategy is strong enough. There are solutions out there. And actually, if I want to extend it further, there's that capacity too. So before, from my perspective, anybody was to go into BETT, just know what it is you're looking for. Actually, also have that knowledge and that understanding of that particular key area as well. So if it is about cybersecurity, if it is about data and DPIs or looking at data breaches, etc., have that knowledge and understanding of what it is you're trying to do. So when you go there, you're focused and you know what you're honing into and you know your requirements. And if you're lucky, you know what sort of outcomes you want as well. So it's having that program, it's having those pathways of knowledge and understanding before you actually enter BETT, which sometimes is, like you said, it's perhaps more feasible for anybody who's in this post, who does digital strategy, who's leading on it in schools and organizations, harder for others who perhaps are only working in silo on what they're doing. But coming through the buyer's guide, asking these questions, having that digital strategy is a great way in first.
Absolutely. I'm going to come to Duncan in a second. One point just to make is, if it is like pick and mix, don't get all the heavy tech because it'll cost you a fortune and it'll weigh up your bag. Just focus on the flying saucers of BETT, the light ones that you can pick up, because it's not going to charge as much. If anybody doesn't understand that, I'm sorry, but you've missed the pick and mix Woolworth era. And also your parents probably had a lot of money. I get brought up in a council estate. I didn't have fudge, wasn't allowed fudge. It was too expensive. I was just on the flying saucers. Another point, Neelam, based on what you just said, actually, was really key. In terms of that digital strategy, I have heard people often that go, well, BETT's great, but a lot of the stuff, it's not aligned with where I'm at right now. But I think, actually, put that accountability back on yourself and just have a think about that. Ultimately, within your strategy, what is the future gazing vision of the long-term focus and where you want to get to? Because right now, it might be a solution that's really relevant, but actually the different steps as you go through your journey on any strategy, that might be just looking at what the art of the possible is, not maybe right now, but actually knowing what those wonderful things are many, many ways down the line, of how you then need to step into it to get to that point. That's a real bit in terms of any strategy, that yes, you need to be fixing these things right now, and there'll be a lot of schools going, it's just not a priority, but actually it might not be a priority right this second. But in any digital transformation, it will become it. And you just need to be thinking about actually what's not just on the agenda this second, actually as a leader and those decision makers thinking about what the future has and will impact as well. Duncan, how does BETT and how do you as organisers actually focus on that then? How do you focus on what as people will classify the dancing robots? I know that EdTech is well beyond that. but actually the real future advancements of where some people might be at in terms of their next step, but also some of those schools that are really just stepping in that maybe don't have that digital strategy. How do you make sure that there is something like a pick and mix for everybody? That's a real challenge. Must be.
It is. There are a couple of things that we're doing this year that I think will help, certainly those that don't have a digital strategy. So we're partnering with one of our big customers, Smart, who provide interactive whiteboards. But they've, a few years ago, developed a really, I think, really smart diagnostic tool. And I've filled it in, and I'm not a school leader, but I filled it in remembering when I was a school governor, which wasn't so long ago. And it's a 20-minute diagnostic tool, asks you a number of questions about your digital strategy at your school, and it pops out a report saying, this is where you, I think they did this in collaboration with UCL. It pops out a report saying, this is where you are on probably the 8 key areas of digital strategy, how you compare with other schools in your region, in your country, and how you compare with schools globally. So you can identify maybe a few blind spots, which might be on network and connectivity or various other issues. So it's a really good step one, I think, to help people say, well, actually, you don't really have a digital strategy. Where am I? What do I need to consider? Let me just answer some prompted questions. And that will give people a pretty good view. And also, I'm sure, give many a lot of confidence in terms of where they compare with peers in terms of aggregated scores from all over the world. In terms of providing the innovations, we're clearly a little bit dependent on the vendors. What are they building? They spend, I think, and I'm sure Neelam would agree, tech is built differently now. They spend a lot more time with teachers and schools, developing that user experience, the UI as well, to make it easier to use. And I think they have much better understanding of what's going on in schools, what are the challenges they're facing, and then building something that works for those tools. So the innovations that are coming should marry up with some of the challenges that schools are facing. It does still make a very diverse, over 600 exhibitors that we'll have this year. But yeah, it absolutely is worth taking the time to either through this diagnostic tool or refreshing yourself with your school or your trust's digital strategy and saying, yeah, what are those areas? What do I need to be thinking about? We ask a lot of questions of people when they register. What are the sorts of pinch points that they have? And what is the sort of time frame they're looking? Not all tech is bought for tomorrow. And we ask, when are you looking to buy? Is it the next 6 months, 12 months, 12 to 24 months? One thing I'll say for EdTech Impact, they have a fantastic tool now called EdTech Impact Manager, which allows schools to have a dashboard where it can look at all of the tech that they've got and what are they using, what are the usage levels, what are the costs, when do the license agreements come to an end, and that will give you a chance to say, okay, well, we've been using these tools for a period of time. Are they making an impact? When does the license come up? So you're not automatically renewing some of these licenses to tech that you're not using. And when we talk to vendors, they want their tech to be used. They want school practitioners, teachers, leaders to unlock all of the functionality that's in their tech. So that there are a lot of things out there that are available through BETT and EdTech Impact that can help you understand where your digital strategy is, what tech you've got and what you're using and using well, and aggregating the feedback on that and measuring the impact that it has. And that should throw out some of the areas, blind spots that you probably need to address.
I suppose, Neelam, in terms of somebody who has been a decision maker, probably a little bit step on from the first time you attended, but when you start to think about actually, John, when you're making those decisions and I've done a list and I've looked at who's going to be there, and which talks I'm going to go to and everything else. Is there any advice for those people during line? Not don't have to be in line with the buyer's guide, but obviously some great insights there in regards to actually how do you ask and what kind of questions can you put to those people that are exhibiting or speaking to then say, kind of show me, don't tell me, that whole thing of that impact judging and the stories of impact that they get. Is there any kind of telltale signs or any bits of learning that you can apply to that as those delegates and those people walking around and thinking about it, and when they've made a cluster, what does that look like?
If I could just come back to what Duncan said about the EdTech Impact Manager dashboard.
Yep.
We have it, and it's been so helpful in helping design it with them, particularly because now we have a clear understanding of the type of applications we have within our trust, for instance, and how many tools we have. And in fact, I'd say probably early on we didn't know, but now that we know, now that anyone who knows what they have in the environment, they can go and have those face-to-face conversations with the providers in the first place. So we're all armed with the information that I have. I'm able to go in and have these conversations with providers and say, well, this is what we're using it, and this is the context we're using it because, it maybe reduces teacher workload or it increases pupil progress, etc. Show me in what way does this do it really well, again, and then what else can it do so that I can continue using it. And so I really wanted to touch upon that because I think it's made a huge impact for us in making really informed decisions about retaining high impact, high value tools that are making a difference to us in our organization. But for those who perhaps don't have this data, this metrics in front of them, when they come to BETT, I would firstly, of course, get them to have conversations with their neighboring schools or their peers. What's working really well for them? What's not? Which are the major highlights? Which are the places they have to go? Who should they go and visit? And then see it in action. So if I could just throw an example out there, I think it was in BETT Asia. Canva has just come out with its magic AI tool. It was amazing. I'm no artist. I don't get these kind of tools very easily. Probably be more back-end database. That's my background. So I went there, and what was really great was when I went there, I obviously saw it in action, but they got the 5-10 minutes of going into applied learning. So I went hands-on, started playing with it, but I came out of there confident, thinking I can do this tool. It's actually not as difficult as you think it is. So have the conversations with people, see what's on the list. What are your pain points? That's number one. What some of the schools doing? Then go to the providers, have a play, because I think that's quite important. Even those 10, even 15 minutes if you want to push it, but in those 10 minutes, you find this is really difficult. I don't think I'm going to get the hang of it. It's okay. Find something that aligns itself with it, because it only gets slightly harder. But if in 10 minutes you get it and it works really well, that's a winner. So just persevere with it. And so that's what I would say. Make sure you research, you talk to people, you come in informed of what you're trying to do, and then go for it. And spend your time just really exploring the floor.
Yeah, I might just add to that. Absolutely play with the technology. One of the things that we are introducing for this year is a live classroom. So we have schools that we know are good users of tech, and they are bringing their children in and they're running lessons. This is how we use tech in the classroom, and these are the benefits that we can provide. There will be a viewing gallery, so people can go and watch, because we know making the leap through a demo with one of the vendors, with you as a school leader, it's not quite the same as seeing the children use it, the benefits, and how comfortable they are with tech. Making that mental leap is sometimes feel risky. So we're going to show, well, this is how some of the tech, and it's at a junior school, we're bringing in a secondary school and a special school. So you see a whole variety of tech being used actually in a live classroom situation.
Yeah, totally. And interestingly, the way you're talking about like what this applies, how it applies in a physical classroom, seeing teachers using it, seeing the things going right and going wrong, and that's always good. I think having done a few of those classroomy type presentations at BETT, saying this works, that works, and it's always when you're doing a live demo, isn't it? Right, that it seems to not play where you want it to play. But it's good there that to circle back on a few things that have been talked about how a lot of these edtech companies now, and not just the tech companies, more broadly educational companies, are bringing educators into that product design phase, as well as the making sure that it's solving the problems that are real life on the ground. We've made jokes more than once that a lot of tools that we've encountered historically have been solutions looking for problems. And now it feels like we're talking about a set of people who are very much trying to work with educators to solve some of the big challenges that we're finding, whether that is an engagement for young people challenge, if it's a well-being and time saver for staff, or whether it's making sure that you're streamlining your products, like talking about some of the elements that you're talking there with the EdTech impact work. And I suppose one of the other things that sits into that mix is that ensuring that all learners can thrive, and ensuring that it's not just about one specific demographic that have got access to X technology, or that are a certain type of ability or finance stream. What I am seeing increasingly, and obviously those two letters that only got invented 3 years ago, that were on everybody's stand around those. The two letters we're talking about AI and everything. AI only got invented 3 years ago, so that's why it's on everybody's lips. But actually, yes, AI, but more importantly, the conversation around inclusion and universal design for learning, thinking about how every plan needs to consider every learner and every type of learner. And in terms of, from your perspectives, and it doesn't really matter where it goes first, like, what do you think we should be looking out for as buyers or as educators going into that space when it comes to accessibility and inclusion? And what should we be really expecting of the conversations that we're having with vendors in that space? Yeah, you go, Duncan.
I'm happy to pick that up. I think this is an area where the buyer's guide is excellent. Actually, it talks about usage, impact, spend, compliance, and it's asking the difficult questions. Let's be sort of honest. Vendors are going to have some really nice presentations, and the tech is going to look amazing, and there will maybe some giveaways on the stand, and there's a lot of excitement and a buzz in the room about. But it's asking those questions on. I think as much for, we recently released our global AI report. So we did a survey with 1,000 teachers, and what rang true was a lot of tech falls over on the implementation and the support, and some of the unseen things, or things that weren't considered. How is it going to affect SEN, EAL students? What support do I get through the implementation and post-implementation? And again, companies are better at this, but they do need to be asked and they do need to be questioned. So I would absolutely be asking those questions, understanding things around how the integration would work. What's your current tech stack? Even if you know it in a very simplistic way, you need to understand how this will work with others. Some tech works better with other applications than others. So understanding that can be helpful. Free trials are great. No school wants to make a commitment, but what happens after the free trial? Do I get the same level of support during the free trial as after? All those sorts of things. Some of them are basic procurement questions. Some are around, say, security, safeguarding of data, all those sorts of things. And there's a really helpful bullet point or checklist within the buyer's guide that people should absolutely be taking along and asking those. Because the vendors you speak to should have really quick answers to those questions. It's not, if I ask every vendor, I'm going to be here for weeks. It's not the case. They should have pretty quick answers to all of those questions.
If I could just add to that, I would take all that so helpful. I think I would also say, do you have any evidence to show me where this particular thing is working in this context? Because that would be really helpful. And then the other thing which I've learned along the way, unfortunately, is what are your long-term plans in terms of any updates, or how you see your product changing, or what are some of the key component features that are going to keep, or how is it going to, so particularly now because we're in an AI age, what's the rolling cycle of that? Where do you see your product going? I know it's a little harder question to ask, but I think if you're going to implement it for more than one school, if you're in a small mat or bigger group of schools, then there is a very big impact to this. So just understanding the product and their journey and where they're going to go with it would help as well, particularly more with new startups.
Yeah, and just on that, actually, a lot of decisions are not made at BETT. They are clarification and progress of a decision or a conversation that's already happened, or a start of a new conversation. I don't know if you have a stat of how many checks are signed at BETT, whether checks even and balances are even a thing anymore. But you know what I'm saying? I think ultimately, if you are being forced or being pushed to make that decision there and then, maybe it's not for you. That's not what BETT is. It's not what I've seen. Actually, it's about how can let's book in something else, let's follow up, and let's move this conversation on. I think that is what BETT is, and I think that's where BETT does a great job in regards to identifying those key partners and those key exhibitors that aren't pushy, that are there to explore, support you wherever you are in your journey. But I think, and at the same point, when you've had a look and you think, right, this is something I need to have a look at, like Neelam said, actually reach out to friends, the circle of trust, and local schools in regards to, I'm thinking about this. Just before I go, do you want to meet me there and have a coffee and take me to that stand and introduce me to somebody that you already know and you work with at that organisation? Or can you just give me a bit of an insight and any questions that, yes, you're further on in your journey, but what challenges, because everybody does it, what challenges did you have to overcome that if you were to do it again, that you would have introduced it differently in terms of your organisation? Because it's not just the tech, it's an implementation of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest, it's not a magic wand. Neelam, I don't know if you want to come in there and think about that network you have. I know you're the most connected person, or one of the most connected people I've ever met in terms of those circles, because through experience, through learning, actually you've been there and you have had that journey. So people are keen to reach out because they just want to know how it implements to their context. So maybe just talk on that if that's okay.
Yeah, so what I would do is, if I'm looking to implement new tech, obviously I start having conversations with people who are already using it. I'd reach out to the provider themselves, really get a good demonstration of what the tech is, and stress upon my previous point about where is your tech going with all of this, and how do you see it changing? I think usually our conversations have been based about, this is the tech, this is the impact, and this is how it will change, it will fix your pain points in your school. But now, because we're moving so quickly, what are they seeing happening with their tech in the environment that is moving at such a quick pace? What I would also do is possibly even reach out to other schools. If I don't know anybody, sorry, let me come back to this. If I don't know anybody who's using this particular tool, then that's how I build my network. So talk to people, like you said, see who knows who. I'd also go out to LinkedIn. BETT's a great place actually to connect. So if you're at that space and you're looking at a particular tool, talk to the people around you. I think that's something we don't do very easily because we don't talk to strangers. I obviously come from a wide variety of backgrounds, so speaking to strangers is not a difficult thing. Oh, rather speaking to somebody in BETT, it's not. You should do that. You'll be surprised at some of the conversations you have. Speak to them, see what they're doing, and lean on LinkedIn. One of the things I think would be really helpful is to just partner up with people who are in this space. And I think you'll find people are quite embracing to working with you. They'll happily talk to you if there are any challenges. I love what you said, Steve, about if there's how did you implement a particular solution, and then what were the problems around that? I think after you go through implementation, you forget. And so it's almost a great point to be able to map out the journey. Or if you've had a really bad experience, you'll think about all the bad things that happened, and then you forget about good bits, even though you've got the product still in your space. So I think that's a good point to make. Have a conversation, see if you can go back and see what were some of the challenges you had along the way, and what could you do differently. Yeah, I'm not sure I answered that question very well.
No, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. And I think the decision that you said there around, I don't know anybody necessarily who's using it, so therefore I build a network around that. Utilize the fact that people are talking about going to BETT. Like this is like a normal part of people's year. It's funny, isn't it? Like the conversation that I now was saying to people is, see you at BETT then. Like it's not like I don't know, I want to see you again. I know the next time I'll see you is going to be in January, 22nd till the 24th at BETT. See a little plug there. I did that, and I'll put that link in the chat. But it's ultimately finding the right people into those conversations, isn't it?
Yeah. What I would say, if I could just add one more thing, is don't forget to go to the CPD sessions. Don't forget to listen to all the fascinating, stimulating conversations that are happening, or the panel discussions. And because I think we all get quite busy at BETT. We meet a lot of people, like you said, we've networked and we're catching up. But often I'll just go and sit down in the middle of the arena on that stage and just sit there and listen, because I know that's my PDE time that I wouldn't get otherwise. Or go to panel discussion and just sit there for a few hours, and something will fall upon your ears, which will be just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do massively appreciate your time, and I know that we allocated some time for this conversation, and it's coinciding with the buyer's guide, the EdTech Buyers Guide being launched, and the link for you to be able to get hold of that is in the show notes, as well as the link for you to be able to get tickets to the event. That will be in the show notes. So click those. If you are listening or watching this, you'll see them there. Duncan, Neelam, thank you so much for joining us on the Edufuturists podcast today. Sad that Michael couldn't be with us, but hopefully that gives us another opportunity to speak to Michael in the very near future. We are super excited to be at BETT 22nd to the 24th of January. We're going to be there and interviewing some people and getting to have some conversations. And as usual, we'll be connecting with our network out there, just like Neelam and Duncan have told us to do. Thanks so much for joining us on the Edufuturists podcast today.
Thank you.